Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Straight Up Talk with Earl Rush and Eileen Torres. This evening, we have the honor and the pleasure of speaking with Joe Conzo Sr. Joe Conzo Sr. is a celebrated Latin music and Latin jazz lecturer. He is the author of the book Mambo Diablo in English and Spanish, and he was producer and best friend of the late legendary timbalero and orchestra leader Tito Puente. Joe Conzo Sr. was on the scene in New York City throughout his life and attended the famed Palladium Ballroom, home of the Mambo. As I stated earlier, he was the best friend of El Maestro. Joe has many behind-the-scenes experience with Tito on too many occasions with celebrities and in private moments with Tito himself and with Tito and his orchestra. So right now we're going to go on over to Eileen Torres and Mr. Joe Conzo Sr.
Thank you. Hello.
Joe, how you doing, sir?
Hanging in there. We're still above ground. That's the important thing.
Okay. Well, Joe has many experiences and so many stories to tell. Enough about me. We're going to get straight to it. So, Eileen, let's get going.
All right, Joe. Tell us where you were born and what the environment was like and the kind of music that was going on in your household.
I was born in New York City in Spanish Harlem in Misericordia Hospital, September 13th, 1942. And I grew up in Spanish Harlem, went to school in Spanish Harlem, and the music that you heard on the radio was the Lelo line music from Puerto Rico, the music from the Palladium on a radio station called Wado. And as I grew up, I was raised by my mother's aunt because my mother divorced in 1947. So my mother was a single parent to my sister and myself. And when we went home to my mother, stay with my mother on the weekends, I would listen to the Make-Believe Ballroom. Make-Believe Ballroom was Martin Block, and that was the big bands. Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Lionel Hampton, Duke Ellington, Count Basie. So I had the best of two worlds. And as I got older, I got into the doo-wop, the heartbeats, the flamingos, which was part of growing up. And every candy store in Spanish Harlem had records. You played a 78 record for 5 cents. I don't know if people know what a 78. Those were the first records.
Yeah.
But you would constantly hear, now with all the laws, but even the furniture stores and everything, they would have the little speakers outside and you would hear the Latin music, depending where you were at. And it was nothing. It became a common thing to walk to 10th Street and 5th Avenue and see Tito Puente, Arsenio Rodriguez, Machito, who lived on 111th Street between 3rd and 2nd. He was like the uncle of El Barrio. Everybody knew him. Tito Rodriguez, Arsenio Rodriguez, who was blind, Nora Morales. I could go on. Joe Cuba. Before that, Joe Panama, Jimmy Salatel, Willie Bobo. I grew up before there were projects. Don't forget, all of these were tenement houses. So you got to see them. And then you got to see all the stickball. Everybody played stickball. And people talk about, I remember, I was telling somebody, I remember when they smoked on a bus. They used to smoke on a bus. I said, yes, because you could open the windows on a bus. You didn't smoke in the subways, but you could do that. I mean, it was 5 cents, 10 cents to take now they're 2 lanes, and mostly in Manhattan, but there used to be 1 lane. Lexington used to go down, 3rd Avenue went up because of the L, the 3rd Avenue L. Madison went up. Yeah, went up because Park went down. I mean, and it was nothing. There were gangs and everything, but it's Spanish Harlem was Spanish Harlem. I mean, from Fifth Avenue to Third Avenue was Spanish Harlem. From Fifth Avenue to the West Side, it was Black Harlem. From Third Avenue to Pleasant Avenue, it was the Italians. So you had your turf wars and everything. But the neutral point in growing up was La Maqueta, was the market.
Yeah.
Everybody would go to the Italians, Puerto Ricans, blacks, everything. And whether you guys were fighting, gangs were fighting, everybody, there was a truce. And you respected a person's mother and a person's sister, especially when you were playing stickball. Everybody would stop. Oh, here comes Joe's mother. Help her with the packages.
Oh.
And a nickel, she would give you a nickel to help her. I mean, a nickel was a lot of money.
Well, Joe, what an eclectic group of people lived in your neighborhood. I mean, did you have any idea that these people would become not just stars, but legends, historical figures that we're going to talk about as long as we're talking about
not really. You looked at them as celebrities. You got to understand, the TV, when it became the TV, that was your entertainment. It was nothing to see Joe Louis, because my uncle, Geraldo, loved boxing, to see Sugar Ray Robinson, to see Kid Gavilan, to see Joe Louis. And then when I went to the baseball games with my mother, because she would take my sister and I, to see Whitey Ford, to see Joe DiMaggio. I mean, I think of those things now. I got to see I got to see Mickey Mantle when he broke his leg the first game. His leg got stuck in a drain. That's history. I was watching that game and Joe DiMaggio was in center. Mickey was in left field. And it was just one of those things. But to see Whitey Ford, to see Jackie Robinson, I mean, I got to see all these people. Then years later, I got to meet Mrs. Robinson because I did functions at the Apollo years later, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But to go to the Apollo Theater, we would go, and there was nothing to see these people walking down the streets because they were available to the public. To see Dizzy Gillespie, to see, like I said, Sugar Ray Robinson, to see Nat King Cole. Yeah, I mean, and on the Latin side, it was nothing to see Machito, Tito Rodriguez, walk to 110th Street and see all these celebrities. To see them, you didn't think of them as celebrities. They were, oh, that's a musician. That's a musician. Well.
So tell me how you first met Tito Puente, since you are so associated with the king of Mambo.
The king of Latin music. Everybody calls him. You can say the timbales, and he was known as he was the greatest. There isn't a drummer in the world. I met Tito at the Palladium.
Okay.
1959, and then it was a place to be. Everybody used to talk about the Palladium. And then I was in the service. I got drafted, and I got to see Tito again in where is it? Oh, in Japan for the USO. He was playing there, and I said hello to him. He says, "I know your face," and and it was just one of those things. Plus, his wife, the widow, Margie Puente, and myself, we grew up together. His son, his oldest son, Ronnie, went to school with my sister. I'm the oldest. So I'm a firm believer in destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just one of those, it was meant to be.
So how did you guys become friends? So you meet at the Palladium, you're reacquainted in Japan. Did you run into him overseas again, or did you?
No, I never ran into him overseas. I came back. I was married to Joey's mother, Lorraine. And, we would go to the dances and say hello to him. And Tito was very, he was forward. He would say hello to you. He was never standoffish, and there was no bodyguards. And one thing led to another. And as I got older, I'm a frustrated conga player. The first album I bought cost me 75 cents, and it was called Cuban Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Me, that was one of his greatest albums. To me, it was a great album. I liked it better than Dance Mania because it plays all the genres. No, it plays everything. And Mongo and him, he's got Palo Rumbero, Willie Bo. I mean, he does everything in that album. You know.
And were you a dancer?
Oh yeah, I dance on too.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'll dance on. I won't dance with a young lady today. I mean, all they do is they swirl and everything, and they're all beat.
They're all
They're off the clave. Yeah, you could tell. It's cool. Oh, I'm not afraid that you're dancing off the. If you look at the majority of dancers in the nightclubs today, they're swirling and everything, but they're not on the beat. They're not on the beat. Especially if the band is playing in clave. A band like the Mambo Legends, which is Tito Puente's former band, or the Spanish Harlem Orchestra, which is a big band. You know, a lot of these guys play off, and they're off. I look at them and say, uh-huh. And then when a girl, I look, oh, do you want to dance, Joe? No, I don't dance.
Well, you told me that you also saw him in Korea. Is that?
No, I was on my way to Korea.
Oh, you were on your way to Korea. I see.
That's how I met him
I got that
in
wrong.
Japan.
Okay.
No, you got that wrong. No. Who I saw in Korea was Bob Hope.
Okay.
Bob
Okay.
Hope and all, because he used to do his shows.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, something that we talked about that I found fascinating, and we may be jumping ahead, but let's talk about Studio 54. And, everyone knows Studio 54 that was the place for all the hippest people. And it was like during
Tito
the
was the
disco
first
era.
Latin band to play at Studio 54.
Uh-huh.
And he befriended Steve Rubel, and I forgot the other guy's name. And I remember going there with Tito. We met Mario Hemingway and Margot Hemingway. They were fascinated with Tito, and it was a place to be. And I remember Tito playing disco music. Don't forget, Tito could play anything he wanted. And the set ended, and Tito looked at Jimmy and me, and he says, "What's going on? How come then nobody's dancing?" And we told him, "You got to play Latin music." So he broke into Mambo Song from Dance Mania, and the rest was history. And I got to take Milta Silva there. I got to escort Cesar Chavez there.
Oh, wow.
The rest of Tito's. Oh yeah, we met a lot of people. Margot Hemingway was 6-something, beautiful. I was a midget next to her, and her sister Mario was just as tall. They were all tall. All the Hemingways were tall. But you got to meet a lot of celebrities.
Yeah.
I mean, if you permit me, I could tell you that was one hell of a place as far as drugs was concerned.
We heard that. Well, tell us a little more about that.
Well, I got an example. I went to the bathroom. It's the first time I ever experienced that. This young lady walks in, and I tried to tell her, "Miss, it's the men's bathroom." She looked at me like I was from another planet. She went to the lady. She went to the stalls. And next minute, I hear her snorting coke. I said, "You got to be kidding." And then, "You're still out there?" I said, "Yeah, what? You want some of this?" I said, "No." And I couldn't believe, but that's how the discos were. Majik's. Majik's was another one just like that. All the discos were open to everything. I saw a young lady dancing and her blouse was opening. I said, "She's got to stop." She kept dancing. The girls came out like nothing, and she just kept dancing. Well, I could tell you stories. I mean, but Cesar Chavez, I would pick Mita Silva, who was the first singer female singer for Earl's purposes for La Sonora Matancera. Celia Cruz took her place because she went back to Puerto Rico. But Mita, I had no problem to pick her up.
Well, let's do a clip. I want to start with an early song, Para los Rumberos, and I'm going to admit to the audience that I knew this first by Carlos Santana. Okay, so let's listen to the original version.
Eileen, is that the song you're talking about?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Let me do a correction. That's not the original version.
Okay.
That's Santana's version.
Okay.
What you're playing by Tito was paying homage back to Santana, and he played the same version.
Oh.
Santana's version. The original version of Palo Rumberos is in an album called Cuatro, or the original version comes out on Cuban Carnival.
Oh.
And you hear Tito Puente and Mongo, they kept trading licks. And matter of fact, he calls it Vamos Rumberos in the movie Mambo Kings When I Kill a Guy.
Okay. Well, Joe, can you tell us who's in this picture with you?
That's Tito Puente, Felipe Luciano, Willie Bobo, Arthur Bonds, and myself. That's at Lincoln Center.
Wow. Wow.
Felipe Luciano is a well-known. He's the founder of, that's the one next to Willie Bobo with the glasses, the shades. He formed the Young Lords. And later on, he became, an anchor person for Channel 4 and everything. And Arthur Bonds was the president of the Urban League in New York City.
Wow.
Oh.
Hey, that's how you learn. Joey Earl, because you asked me about Joey's. Joey has a lot of pictures besides hip hop, and he's done that to me. He'll throw pictures of Dad, who's this? That's Max Roach and that, jazz people.
Let's talk a little bit about that. The close proximity of Birdland to the Palladium. Talk about the interchange that happened and how the jazz musicians were so enamored with what they heard coming out of the Palladium, and how the Latin musicians were really able to master the jazz genre.
The person I would say most that mastered the jazz was Tito Puente and Machito.
And Mario Bausa.
With Mario Bausa. Remember, they're the ones that opened the door. The first person to play it at the Apollo Theater was Alberto Socaraz, a flute player. Then Mario Bausa with Machito, they recorded a tune called Tanga in 1943, and that was the first marriage of Latin music and jazz. Don't forget, Mario Bausa played with Cap Calloway and
Chick
Webb, which is where he met Ella Fitzgerald. But the point I'm trying to get at, that was his dream, and he managed to do that. And I have many live recordings of Machito at Birdland. And I also have Machito with Charlie Parker at the Apollo Theater, at the Bandbox. 52nd Street, let me give everybody a history of 52nd Street. Birdland was on the corner of 52nd Street and Broadway. When you came 50 feet, maybe 75 feet, that was the Palladium on 53rd Street and Broadway. When you turn 52nd Street and Broadway, going into 7th Avenue, forget about it. Every 10, 15 feet was a jazz club. That's why they call it the jazz corner of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You could go in here, and I wasn't privileged to see that. I was privileged to go to Birdland. But in the other clubs, you never know who was going to be there. Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Bud Powell. I mean, people of that era, they would sit in with each other. The most famous person that would go to the Palladium, I would say two people, would be Cal Jada. When he saw Tito Puente playing the Vibes, and he was playing with George Shearing at the time. And he says, I want to play this. Because Cal Jada was a percussionist. He played conga, timbales, and things like that. And he mastered the vibes. Tito was the first to play vibes in Latin music. Lionel Hampton was the first to play vibes in jazz. And then the second jazz musician, I would say that, mentioning Lionel Hampton, I wouldn't be surprised if he went up there. But the most famous person that went up there, jazz musician, was Dizzy Gillespie.
Wow.
Don't forget Dizzy's roots he got from Chano Pozo, which I have a live recording of 1948 doing Manteca.
Wow.
With Symphony Sid. And this was done at the Royal Roost. See, all these clubs. The other advantage that we have, people say he's got so many live recordings. Live recordings were done. They would do broadcasts from a lot of these clubs, except the Palladium.
Why was that?
Because Max Hyman didn't want nobody to record at the Palladium. It was Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, and Machito that convinced him to let Ernie Hensley, who was a dancer, to tape.
Well, and I want to pay homage to Ernie, because when I first started doing lectures on the history of salsa, I was trying to find footage, and they told me about Ernie, and I would tell Ernie what I would be talking about, and he would compile those VCR tapes and send them to me, and that's what I would use. This guy had, like, anything I wanted, anything I said to him, he had. I mean, he would send me stuff from Cuba. He would, because he would tape some of the TV shows.
He would travel with two bands because they loved him. It was Orquesta Aragon from Cuba and the Gran Combo from Puerto Rico. Ernie, unfortunately, did not. His VHS stuff, he had more knowledge because he would mark them. His cassettes never marked them.
Oh, boy.
Before Ernie passed away, because he had diabetic, he was a diabetic, I managed to get Ernie over $40,000 and Musica, which became that own Fania at the time, bought his collection.
Wow.
So
what a treasure.
They hired me to cipher that collection. Don't forget, I lived in that era. So I knew the difference between Orchestra Broadway, Orquesta Aragon. I knew the difference between Johnny Pacheco and his charanga and Eddie Palmieri. And as a matter of fact, they tried to be so slick because they were sent for me. I had to go to Florida. And they hired a musician, and I played them a cassette. And he said, well, that's so-and-so. I said, good guess. So then I took the same cassette, and I played an Eddie Palmieri. He couldn't name it. Then I played a Tito Puente. He couldn't name it. So I told the owner, I said, you ever pull that stunt again, I'm leaving. Because we didn't know, you know, Tito had a certain style.
Right. Everybody had different styles.
Yeah.
Tito Rodriguez had a certain, Machito had a certain, that sound. As a matter of fact, I told Gilberto Santa Rosa 2 years ago in Puerto Rico, I said, you ever hear of Mambo In by Tito Rodriguez? He looked at me, he says, Joe, you mean Tito Puente or Machito? I said, no, Tito Rodriguez. Tito Rodriguez recorded it, but it was never released. And I happen to have it. And the melody is there, but they do it all differently.
Really?
They give it a different flavor. Play El Jamaiquino, the Jamaican, all by all three of them. And Tito, ¿Qué le pasó el Jamaiquino? Blah, blah, blah. And Tito Rodriguez's thing was Quija, which is the jawbone of a jackass.
Oh yeah.
That was
Okay.
This thing is crazy. That was the
Now they call it the vibra slap.
yeah, but but they used to use a
Yes.
real jaw
With the teeth jangling.
teeth jangling.
Yeah.
How many people know Jim Byers? I tried to tell you the other day played the tune Wancoa. Miguelito Valdez and his orchestra. Who's the composer? Tito Puente. So it's on YouTube. I played it. I said, that's not Miguelito's orchestra. That's Tito Puente's orchestra. The piano player is Charlie Palmieri.
Wow.
See, you got to relate the stories when you know about the musicians. How did you know it was Charlie Palmieri? How did I know? Because Charlie played a certain style. As a matter of fact, that was Tito Puente's favorite piano player.
Wow.
Not only that, Gil Lopez was drafted and went to Korea in 1950. There were no contracts in those days. They would record for Tico, RCA, Tito's back and forth. I released 156 recordings I produced. All the Tico 78s of Tito Puente. And I released all the RCA recordings of Tito Puente, 218.
Well, let me ask you, how did Gilberto Santa Rosa react to hearing this? Because he is not just a fan, he is a fanatic of Tito Rodriguez.
It blew his mind when I called him, because I didn't have it with me. I didn't. He says, Coño, Joe, wow, you know. Very down. That's another person he's a sponge. Listens to you. Dandy and I, we all went to lunch. First of all, we went to his house, not his actual residence. He bought Tito Rodriguez's house, which is a pagoda, which is a museum. And when I'm there, I said, you're missing this, you're missing that. And, you know, it was fascinating. He never met Tito Rodriguez. He used to see Tito Rodriguez because his mother was a fanatic. And he told his mother, one day I'm going to buy you that house. And that's the only house, Japanese house, on the island. She passed away before he bought that, but he promised and he bought the house. And I'm sure she's looking down, and he's become very successful, but very down to earth. Dandy would tell him stories. Dandy Rodriguez, you know, he played with all of them. His father did also. We all grew up in that period. And Santa Rosa would say, you're kidding. Ask Joe. Spanish. It was things that people we met and who we hung out with.
Okay, I want to play another tune. Did you want to say something first, Earl?
He had mentioned Tanga. That's one we have, but I didn't. You know, I wanted to know whether you wanted to play that since he had mentioned that, or you want to. I don't want to go out of order. That would be the only one out of order because you know.
Well, and I
Tanga play it.
Let's do it. Yes, let's do that.
corazón. No, 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 no. Wow.
That's
So I want to ask you some questions about this, because I talk about Mario Bausa and his influence, etc. And so what I learned, and you tell me if this is right, because you know, okay, so what I have learned is that one night after they had played a gig, the piano player was playing a riff, and then the bass player came in, and he chimed in, and Mario told him, remember what you're doing, because tomorrow we're going to expand on that. Is that the correct story, or is there more?
I understand that was the true story. They were playing the vamp from El Botellero. That's the name of the tune.
Okay.
And they say it was Joe Loco, who was part of the band at the time, and it was Bobby Rodriguez. There's different stories, the bass players. How true it is, I don't know. I was born, but I wasn't there. But that was a tune that was ad-libbed, and they just kept adding to it. I have so many live versions of it with Charlie Parker, with Blue Moore, and they would just add to Howard McGee, and that became their theme song. The version you played, that was the last time they ever played Tanga, and that's the United Artists version. And that was it,
As I understand, that song is credited with being the first recorded Latin jazz tune. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Supposedly it was done in 1943. The actual recording came out in 1948 by Norman Granz, and it was a 78 on Clef Records. Norman Granz was the one that did Jazz at the Philharmonic. He's the one that Billie Holiday, multi-millionaire, and he took them all over. He didn't care whether they were white, black, Chinese, and he told the public that they go where I go. And he put them all together, Billie Holiday, Count Basie, and then I was very fortunate to meet him on the phone, and we took all the Mercury recordings on an album called Mucho, Mucho Macho, where it's on Pablo Records, where he does all the Mercury recordings. Barabaratiri, Hall of the Mambo King. That's on Mucho. It's called Mucho, Mucho Macho Salsa.
I'm taking notes.
Okay. Yeah. But Tanga supposedly is considered one of the first, if not the first, the combination. You got to.
When did you start? What made you decide you're going to record all this live music, and when did you start it? And how many recordings do you have?
I'm going to be honest with you. I never. People gave me recordings. Tito gave me recordings. I wasn't Ernie Hensley. I would go to the sets with Tito. Tito, when he would come back, if they recorded something, he says, give it to me. He would give me the cassette. He says, keep this for posterity. Tito was very notorious for preserving the history of the music. I was very fortunate. Tito would go to Europe. Hi, young man. See, Tito would go to Europe, and I got Chucho Valdez playing all blues. 12 minutes. Wow.
Wow.
I mean, Tito would do, but it was notorious that way. Tito was very Ernie, like he gave you. Ernie would give me all the records. I'll give you another example. One of my students at the college where I give the lectures on the history, I've always been looking for this tune called El Príncipe Niño by Orchestra Broadway. It's an old Cuban tune. And they recorded it. So I called Eddie Zevigon from the leader of Broadway. I said, did you ever make this live? He says, Joe, I don't have copies. I did it maybe once or twice. It's a very difficult number because of the breaks.
Mm.
Anyway, one of my students gives me live recordings of Orchestra Broadway at the Corso.
Famous Corso.
A famous Corso. And it's Típica Ideal and Orchestra Broadway. So I said, oh, thank you. And then there's one tune, he says, Danzón, because that's what it was. As I'm driving to come back to up here where I live, I had to pull over. It was the tune. He never put the title because he didn't know. All he did was put Danzón. And I called him. I said, Carmelo. He says, what? I said, do you know what you gave me? He says, no. And then I explained it. He says, you're kidding. He says, well, what's the name? I said, that's called El Príncipe Niño.
Wow.
I send it to Eddie Zevigon. Eddie, I mean, he flipped out. He says, Coño, Cubans call you by your Coño, Conzo. They call you by your last name. And he was very happy. And I have it. So I've been very fun.
How many do you have in total? Just take a wild guess.
Wild guess about 50,000 live recordings.
Wow.
Live recordings. I have over 7,000 live recordings of Tito.
My God.
Well,
And
Tito, Ernie, like I said, Ernie would mark things. And Ernie had cassettes, and then he had the open reels.
Oh, wow.
So the guy that wrote the book with me, David Perez, he has open reels. So we would make copies, send them back to Air Musica, and we would figure them out. I mean, Love is a Many Splendid Thing. Tito never recorded that, but yet he played it live.
Okay.
Misty, look at me. I said, you gotta be kidding. This is what, and I am very fortunate because I know the music, so I know the titles. And I've shared that with his family, with Ronnie and little Tia, mostly with Ronnie, because Ronnie says, you got what? I said, yeah, I'll make you a copy.
So please, because this was a question I asked you because it's so important, you have this tremendous treasure of all these recordings. So I asked, what will happen to them once you're gone? So please tell our audience how they're going to be preserved.
They're going with me.
Just like King Tut, right?
That's right, baby. I had a long talk with Joey. My record collection, and it's funny, as record historians, you start building up another record. I'm now building up another collection again. I gave my collection. I made some money because we lost Joey's mother in Maria, the hurricane. So he says, Daddy, you got a will? I said, yeah, why? He says, you're going to leave me the music. So to make a long story short, I said, of course. So he says, want to make some money now while you're still alive? I said, yeah. Anyway, we donated it to Cornell University. And the other day I was talking to Joey. I said, we got to sit down and talk because he says, you have all those live recordings. I said, yes, we have to sit down and talk what we're going to do with them because that's where the money's at. Records you can buy. Always remember that, Eileen, Earl. Records you can buy not unless it's something that's never been released. That's rare. And if you're a real collector, you might want to buy a 78 Like Jim Bias has a hell of a collection.
Yes, he does. What a library.
Library. But the point is, you live recordings, they're very hard to find. Miles Davis, a lot of the jazz musicians that have passed on, now they're finding live recordings of them in Europe in some of these nightclubs.
Oh, wow.
And so what happens is like Sony Records and things like they're bringing these things out. The bootleg collection of Miles Davis. The bootleg. So they're doing those things. You know, live recordings are very hard to come by.
Well, let's get back to Cornell. I mean, how does Cornell figure into this?
Cornell, because that's where Joey has his collection.
Ah, okay.
And Joey befriended them to another person who helped him do the book. Because it's a sad thing to say. New York City does not have a Latin museum. I don't use the word salsa because salsa Earl is what she cooks. And I'm sure you know what it is. Salsa to me is sauce. I don't like it. If I tell Eileen, let's go salsa mambo, she'll tell me, Joe, that's not proper English. You know. Anyway, because there is no museum. There's a gentleman called Johnny Cruz whose father passed away, and he left him the whole brownstone on the corner of 107th Street and Lexington Avenue.
Is that the one where the store is in front and the stuff is behind the store?
Yes. And it's been there for the last couple of years. They talk about that they want to do a museum, blah, blah, blah. And I've already seen the new so-called Salsa Museum, who's on the board of directors. I said, here we go again. See, you checked on the Hip Hop Museum. Now, the Hip Hop Museum has got the pioneers, the people that lived it, the Fat Joes. You got it through documentation, through my son and through other people. You got the recordings. See what I told you before about Alberto Sacaras, the first Latin musician to play at the Apollo Theater? There was a guy that had a website, and on his website, he said the first person to play the Apollo was Pacheco. He came to my lecture, and I said, where do you get off putting this? Oh, that was my assistant. Your assistant. Don't you check on your assistant? That's your name. Oh, I'll correct it. No, he hasn't corrected it. People, we have a tendency as human beings to believe what we read.
Yeah.
The difference between this book and it says my journey with Tito Puente, because I was with Tito. There was a guy that criticized Tito about the hip hop thing, the Sugar Hill Gang. Oh,
tell us about that. Tell us.
There it is. And he did that. Who put it up? Somebody did?
I just
Earl.
Earl. Yeah. Tell you about what? No, I just told you. Somebody criticized and said that Tito did alternate takes and he wasn't in the studio. So Jose Madera, who was the musical director for Tito Puente's orchestra for 30 years, told the person, I tell you what, you feel that way? Hey, he's on Facebook. Question Joe Conzo, because Joe Conzo was there. They never did.
So tell us about Tito Puente's involvement with the Sugar Hill Gang.
Nothing. I just told you. We were in a car. We went to Sugar Hill, the Mars Levy. I thought he was going to Sugar Hill in Harlem. Tito misinterpreted Mars Levy, and we went to see Sylvia Robinson, and that was the Sugar Hill Gang. He was doing a favor for Morris Levy because she wanted to do a different take. And Morris Levy told Sylvia, I will send you Tito Puente and we'll give it a different flavor. When they saw Tito Puente walk in, they said, who is this old man? And then they realized that Sylvia knew him, and the rest is history. He did the tune in one take, and it's called Sugar Hill Groove.
See,
and his name is mentioned.
that's new to me.
Yeah, I mean, I have it. I got a copy for Joey, and we tell people, all the hip hop experts. Oh, and they don't know that. Earl looked at me when I said Africa Bambata. He said, "You're kidding." And he looked at me. I looked, because don't forget, I knew these guys when they were Mr. Conzo. They used to call me Mr. Conzo when Joey was growing up, and I knew all these guys.
Wow.
I said, "Call me Joe." No. Curtis Blow. Curtis Blow is another person. Joey did me a favor. I was in Virginia, and he was doing a show. I was with a lady friend of mine, and she wanted to go see the show. And carte blanche, backstage, Joe. I mean, pictures, the whole 9 yards. And he remembered me.
Wow.
Well, we had Joe Baton on the show
Another guy.
a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling us how Curtis Blow challenged him to a rap battle over in Europe.
Yeah, it's possible. And you know what? I went to see it with Curtis Blow. He was doing the Nutcracker Suite. Nutcracker hip hop is called.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this is a whole show, dances and everything, and they play the Nutcracker Suite,
Oh my
part
God.
of it in hip hop.
Tchaikovsky in hip hop
Yes,
style.
yes.
Wow, that is a stretch.
Well, this guy Terrence Blanchard from Chicago, he just opened the Met last night. The first time a black composer did the Metropolitan Opera.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Gosh, you are on top of everything. Let's, I want to get back a little bit to early Tito, and this is another song from Dance Mania. And it's so hard to pick one because every song is so terrific, but I chose this. Saca tu mujer. So let's hear that one, Earl.
Bandoleros.
Saca tu mujer bandolero, sácala a pasear. Saca tu mujer bandolero, sácala a pasear. Tú siempre te estás guillando, te la van a levantar. Mulato, 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 sácala a pasear. Saca tu mujer bandolero, sácala a pasear. Saca tu mujer bandolero, sácala a pasear. Tú siempre estás comentando que la quieres de verdad, pero mira, no te guilles. Sácala a pasear.
Oh,
That's a great tune.
That's Tito's tune. Tito's the composer. That's Santito Colon and Ray Barretto. And that's the first album that they did together. Ray Barretto and Tito Puente and Santito Tito was without a singer for 3 years. Gilberto Moroy was his last singer, and it was like a blessing because then Tito, when he did Cuban Carnival, everything is ad lib, and he did You know, he stretched. He brought in the Doc Severinsen. The people don't know that Doc Severinsen played with Tito.
I didn't know that.
And
And I watched
recordings.
the documentary on Doc Severinsen.
Well, on the recording, but on different recordings. Jose Cubello broke up his band. And in the band was Ray Barretto and Mr. Tito and Mr. Santito Colon. Because Jose Cubello wanted to start a booking agency. So Momo Santa Maria and Willie Bobo were going to Cal Jada. So Tito he said, perfect. Right, Tito's favorite face, right place at the right time and everything. It turned out perfect. It took Ray Barretto, and he brought in Santito Colon, who he knew already, and the rest is history. Ray stayed with Tito until 1960. Santito stayed with him until the middle 60s.
Who's the vocalist on that?
Santito Colon.
Okay.
Yeah, great singer. So let's talk a little bit about this Dance Mania album and how it is so influential, and talk about the accolades that it received from both the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times.
Well, because of sales, the Palladium, Tito hadn't done anything in the last 55 years. Everything was jazz, instrumentals, night beat, vibe, mambo, mucho cha-cha-cha, was all instrumentals and chorus. He didn't have, you could dance to some of them, but he didn't have that that everybody was looking for. Matter of fact, I am very fortunate. I have a live recording at the Patio Club where Tito first started with Tony Bennett.
Wow.
In 1956, where he does Mambo Song. You have it there on Dance Mania, very fast, but he does Agusal very slow.
Oh.
And Tito, he was rehearsing. He does that. He does Guajira. He does different tunes. I said the son of a gun was getting ready to do an album. But on that album, on that live recording is Mongo and Willie Bobo, the live recording. When he recorded Dance Mania, they were out of the picture already. Izzy Rodriguez, the greatest dance album ever made, Dance Mania. There's two of them. There is a more Dance Mania.
Dance Mania 2, is that what it was?
No, it was called More Dance Mania.
Okay, all right.
And it was only released in Venezuela.
Wow. Interesting. So let's get back to the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times.
Whoever did it, I don't have it in front of me. Whoever the critics were, they must have put albums throughout the years, and they decided, let's name a Latin band, and this was the one. They didn't come up with Julio Iglesias. They didn't come up with Gloria Estefan. What their logic was, I have no idea. I tell you, Sinatra, I forgot what they named that song. Oh, Michael Jackson. You're talking about heavies. And Tito was number 12, Sinatra was number 13. They mentioned, I think, Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, but Tito was the only Latin.
So we're talking about the 25 most influential recordings of the 20th
century.
Right.
And keep in mind, and I tell people this, you can travel all over the world and you can mention Pacheco, you can mention Celia Cruz, you can mention Gloria Estefan. They'll look at you. Mention Tito Puente. They know who he was. Bill Cosby said that. He says, I've never seen people, everybody knew Tito Puente. I went to a lecture with Joe Bataan, with Grupo Folklorico. I went to Germany. And Rene Lopez was considered one of the foremost historians in the world on Cuban music. And we're all on the dais, and you'd be surprised. Germans know their music. Yeah, because they would play music. And somebody asked about Tito Puente, and they couldn't answer the question. They said they pointed to me. And then everything was back to about Tito Puente, about Tito Puente. I said, whoa, ask these gentlemen other questions. But Tito was, I've seen things in my life. I went to buy some records the other day, and I met a producer with Jay and the Americans.
Oh, wow. I like them, yeah.
Yeah. But he
Great
said
voice.
Jay's very sick. He's Alzheimer's and everything. Anyway, he says, you know so-and-so? I said, I don't know if I see him. Well, he knows Tito and all that. So he calls the guy on the phone. He says, I'm here with, do you know a guy called Joe Conzo? And the guy says, who doesn't know Joe Conzo? If you know Tito Puente, you know Joe Conzo. And Joe, and he mentions who Tito was. People, I've seen things that blow my mind. Cousin Brucey. Tito and I are in a restaurant. And I'm getting up to go to the boys' room. Excuse me, sir. I say, yeah, your cousin Bruce. Is that Tito? I said, yeah. Could I meet him? Tito was notorious for meeting people, and he didn't know who they were. Studio 54 was that way, or Magic's. Oh. And I'll give you another one. Tito died May 31st, 2000. The Grammys was in March of 2000. Him and I are walking in the hotel where they had the Grammys and every celebrity you could think of from the Grammys. Willie Nelson said hello to Tito Puente. In my mind, I'm saying, it's country and western. Clive Davis, Tito. Roy Haynes. Roy Haynes is 97 years old. The drummer played with everybody. I'm looking at this. When Tito wins the award, the Grammy, B.B. King, Tony Bennett, and I was in love with this woman because of her hair. She's country and western. She has white hair. What's her name? Emily? Anyway, it'll come. But I'm saying, you gotta be kidding. They're all there surrounded talking to Tito. It was something to see.
Well, and you're known for being so close to Tito, but you also are very well versed in the music and the appearances of people like Tito Rodriguez and Machito. So I want to play a song.
Emmylou Harris.
Emmylou Harris. Okay. All righty. Now you got it. Okay. Let's hear Mama Abuela by Tito Rodriguez, and then your impressions and your stories. Yes.
Mama abuela, mama, como mama abuela, yeah, mama abuelona, mira, como mama abuela, Mama abuela, mama abuelona, mama abuela, mira, como mama abuela, mama abuela.
1,
No.
The original title to that tune is called Mambo Mona.
Mambo Mona.
He sings, he says the lyrics, Mama Abuela, but for some reason, that was a 78, a Tico 78. That was a small band, a conjunto, 2 trumpets, 3 trumpets, and that was it, no saxes. That version you played was at the Palladium. Tito Rodriguez at the Palladium. And if you, as the show, you see Eddie Palmieri is in one of those photos. I forget, Eddie Palmieri played piano for him. And it was an interesting, I have live versions of that in Puerto Rico, which I've shared with Gilberto Santa Rosa. That's another thing about Santa Rosa. He shares stuff with me. He has given me stuff on Tito Rodriguez with Nora Morales, which I didn't know. But he has a vast collection too. And, you know, like I said, he's a sponge. Rodriguez, to me, was one of the best dance bands of the Palladium era. And if I could say it, he had a better dance band than both of them. Even though I'm with Puente, but he had a dance band. And the advantage you have with all 3 of them, they were all dancers. Puente was a hell of a dancer. You've seen Tito Rodriguez dance he was doing break dancing in the movie Mambo Madness.
Right.
Machito was a hell of a dancer. You know.
Well, let's play. You know, because he's also known as a crooner. You know, like the Bing Crosby of Latin music.
Oh, Frank Sinatra of Latin music.
Well, okay, whichever one.
More so Frank Sinatra.
Okay. So let's play. This is just a very live version, and God, the pianist is incredible. So it's a shortcut, and let's listen to one of his biggest hits, Inolvidable.
Pueden olvidarse imborrables momentos que siempre guarda el corazón, porque aquello que un día nos hizo templar de alegría es inspirado y pueda olvidarse con un nuevo amor. He besado otras bocas buscando nuevas ansiedades y otros brazos extraños me estrechan llenos de emoción, pero solo consiguen hacerme recordar los tuyos que inolvidablemente vivirán en mí. Damas y caballeros, Julio Gutiérrez.
That's the composer of Inolvidable.
Really? What was his name?
That's Julio Gutierrez.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
Julio Gutierrez, the composer of Inolvidable. I kept saying, who's the piano? Then I said, oh, that's Julio. Julio used to play at Victor's Cafe. Good friend, great friend. Tito, all of us, you know, he knew it was all Charlie Palmieri, all of us. And hell of a guy, very down to. He was gay, but one thing has nothing to do with the price of eggs. Hell of a musician and hell of a friend. Very down to earth. And he was like the house. There was no band. It was like a little piano, a little
Like
trio.
a piano bar, kind of like that.
In the back of Victor's Cafe, which was very famous. All the celebrities would go there if you wanted Cuban food.
Yeah.
And when Tito and I walked in there, or Charlie, he'd come, he'd hang out with us, Celia, and he's a composer. He's the composer of Inolvidable.
Well, and you look at Tito Rodriguez, and my God, he is so GQ. He always
Oh, to the
looks
nine.
beautiful, always
To the nine.
gorgeous. Yes.
Well, let me give you a little overview of Tito Rodriguez with the band. Tito Rodriguez would actually inspect you. People laugh about that, but I'm saying no. He was impeccable. If your shoes weren't shine, go shine. He'd make sure you were to the nines. I mean, and he was a hell of a musician. He may have read music, but he had a hell of an ear.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't do something right, I saw Mario Bowser, all three of them. They'd stop. What are you doing? Puente was notorious with that. I've seen him stop with the bass player, and he says this. They actually would curse, and you had to play this in C major, that. No, but you're not doing it.
Wow. Embarrassing.
And the other thing about these guys, not Machito, because Machito was a singer. Maraca. Puente was an all-around musician. He played the piano in a heartbeat. He played sax in a heartbeat. I went into a session with him. We went into Eileen, you guys, record parties when they were giving the records out, release parties. Walked into a bar, Eddie Palmieri's there, and everybody, Tito Puente. Next minute I know, I'm hearing Los Timbales. I said, that's not Tito. And then I'm hearing the piano. I said, that's not Eddie. They switched. Eddie Palmieri knows how to play timbales.
Interesting. Wow.
And so did Charlie.
Wow.
There's a photo on Facebook, and matter of fact, it's in the book, of Charlie Palmieri, Tito Puente in the middle, and Caco. Johnny Rodriguez gave me that picture. I happen to have the live recording of it.
Look at that.
And then you have to tell who's the timbaleros, because they all. But when Charlie's como mi ritmo no hay dos, they're playing cachaos to him. And I said, who the hell is playing timbales? And Willie Torres, may he rest in peace, just died a year and a half ago. He says, go ahead, Charlie. And I said, oh, wow, I forgot that Charlie plays timbales.
Amazing. I just want to give a shout out to Izzy Rodriguez because he is a loyal viewer, and he is, from my estimation, a guy that is just learning everything he possibly can.
There was Brian Martinez. He calls me Joseph. I'm going to kill him.
We never called you that.
No, Madera does.
Who?
Madera.
Oh, really?
Actually,
really?
Hi, Brian. Behave yourself.
Yes. Okay. Let's go into a little bit of Machito, and you chose this song, Babarapatiri. So let's hear a little bit of Machito, and then you tell us, your stories about Machito.
Oh, okay. You
Wow.
hear that drive. That's a live recording of Baratiri. And that's the original recording of the recording. You know, that's how they play. The first singer and person to do Baratiri was Benny Moré. He did it with Paris Prado in Mexico. And then Machito did it here. Then Puente did it live at the Palladium also with Vicentico Valdez. People like Puente's version for some reason, I guess because of the singer. I happen to like Macho's version because it's that bump that gives it that. Tito Rodriguez never recorded it.
Wow.
Well, did you notice, Earl, that had a picture of a young Joe Conzo at the top that said Joe Conzo Sr. presents.
Uh-huh.
So I selected that.
Oh, that was done in El Barrio. That's a picture of me in Spanish Harlem with Machito.
Oh, okay. So, Joe, let me ask you this. They told me that Tony Curtis used to be a pretty good mambo dancer. Can you name a few of the celebrities that were actually good mambo dancers? Not that attended there, but were actually great mambo dancers.
I would say great dancers, period. I'll give you an example. I have a video. You're talking about Bernie Schwartz. That's Tony Curtis's real name. I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying. I can tell you right now, two dancers who Tito imitated a lot when he walked was James Cagney and George Raff.
Wow.
I have a tune. I have an album and Manicero, the first tune that opened the doors. It's a video, and George Raff was dancing with a girl with a Roomba shirt. Bum, 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 bum. I said, you gotta be kidding. Now, these are two guys that played racketeers in the movies. They were hoodlums.
Yeah.
But Tito walked like them. Tito had their mannerisms. And Tito was a hell of a dancer. I'm not saying that there weren't great dancers in the American, because Celebrity Night was Wednesdays at the Palladium. they all went up there. I would say a person like Lena Horne, Eartha Kitt. I'm giving you certain people that would go there. As a matter of fact, there is a picture of Eartha Kitt dancing that I have at the Palladium. As far as the Anglos, I know Marlon Brando would sit in, play congas. And one of the greatest entertainers in the world, Sammy Davis Jr. This guy was sitting with Tito, sitting with Macho, and he played everything.
Wow.
He played everything. I mean,
You know, Joe, I saw a soap opera star. Tito was in Los Angeles, and I was at, it was a ballroom. And there was a blonde soap opera guy that used to be on The Young and the Restless in the early days. And he was dancing mambo to a...
you talking about Dennis. Yeah, he passed away. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Because I was so surprised.
He was close to Josephine Powell, who was another person that knew Tito very, very well.
She wrote a book, right? She wrote one of the books.
Yes. She just passed away 2 months ago.
Did she?
She had
wow.
cancer, yeah.
Wow.
I forgot Dennis's last name. He was married.
Cole, wasn't it?
Dennis
Cole.
Cole.
Yes.
He was married to Jacqueline Smith, and he was a hell of a dancer.
Yeah. Yeah, Earl, I was surprised to see back in those days a blonde guy tearing it up.
Josie probably taught him. Josie was a hell of a dancer. She was a dancer.
Wow.
She danced with a lot of, and she would go to Cuba and then, you know what I'm saying? Cuba at the time, one of the greatest dance group that came out of the Palladium was Augie and Margot. I mean, they were on Ed Sullivan, Steve Allen's show when Fidel was coming into the bombs and everything. There's a clipping of that. they both passed away, but they were actual dancers like Ernie and Dottie. Tati's mother dances with Tito. I mean, it was nothing to dance with these people,
Well, because if you hear that music, you've got to move. But I want to move on. I want to move on to the movie The Mambo Kings. So let's play the trailer from there, and then we're going to talk about that film. I'm going to say something that I heard Tito say once about the film, and then we're going to talk about you as the role of the killer.
Okay.
We're all gonna get rich and happy and famous here in America.
In
1952, the Castillo brothers came to America.
I love this country.
With a suitcase full of songs and a head full of dreams.
Just off the boat, and you think you're gonna land a gig in a downtown club?
There is more to life than just playing mambo.
Well, there is.
But as the music played,
You're the cat's meow on stage.
I know that, Frank.
and the rhythms pounded,
Have a Havana with me, Cesar. And let's see how Fernando Perez can take the Mambo Kings to the top.
passions rage.
In my own way, I have loved you. You really don't know how lucky you are to have a woman like Dolores.
Tempers flared.
Why do I always have to do what you want?
And only their music could keep two brothers
You sign with me, mi amigo, and your future is gold.
from falling apart.
Please, don't break his heart.
Nobody owns the Castillo brothers.
Be careful, Maestro.
From the Pulitzer Prize-winning pages of the steamy and controversial bestseller, The Mambo Kings.
That's my neighbor, Amanda Sante. What's up here?
So tell me if this is correct, because I do remember there was a lot of criticism that, you know, people didn't think it was authentic. And as I recall, Tito Puente pretty much told people, if you don't like it, make your own movie.
You did. And I said the same thing. The Daily News interviewed me, and they were criticizing. And me as a historian, I said it's true. People came from other countries to try to make it. Desi Arnaz was one. Machito was another. So the point I'm trying to get at is I said the same thing. If they don't like it, let them make their own movie. I was a consultant on the movie, besides acting as the killer, because Earl, Eileen, and Mr. Handsome Joe Conzo. Who Lupe Torres? Oh, yeah.
Your new fan.
Anyway, I told Arnie Glimpson nobody ever got killed in the Palladium. The bouncers were so big. You know, if Eileen and I were married and I got into an argument with Eileen and I wasn't feeling no pain, they would throw me down the stairs. You went up this way, and in the back, you went down the other way. And she said, that's my husband. They said, lady, you're going with him. They wouldn't touch you, but they would touch you. Anyway, Arnie Glimpser said it's a movie. And I went along with it. And they had to get me a 25. I told him, you got to get me a 25 or 22. And he says, why? I said, you're talking about the 1950s. There was no Glocks or 9 millimeters. You know. So I even told him, I'll make you a zip gun. Anyway, and when I kill the guy, because you see me there, I'm killing the guy on the tune called Palo Rumberos, the original version, which Tito managed to do, and he calls it Vamos Rumberos. And, you know, Carlos Gomez, who happens to be a very dear friend of mine, he's been on a lot of programs. He was on the Baker the Beauty and the Baker. He was the father.
Okay.
Well, anyway, he's going on to bigger and better things. The point I'm trying to get at is that this is what you did, Hollywood, and they tried to make it as authentic as they could. And Cuban Pete's in there, the original Eddie Donay. And by the way, those solos that you see Amanda Santa doing, that's Tito Puente.
Well, and I always wondered about that. I'm like, how many lessons did he take to be able to do
No,
that?
he was a drummer when he was young.
Okay.
And Tito says he's good, but if you know Tito's style and like I do, and I said that's not this guy. Yeah.
What about Antonio Banderas? That wasn't him playing that trumpet, was it?
No. In fact, that was his first movie. I took Antonio Banderas, Amanda Sante with Tito. We went to the Bronx, and we ate at a restaurant. He flipped out. Took him to a nightclub. He couldn't believe it. Young guy, it's another thing, very down to earth, very humble. Antonio Banderas. People saw who they were. They knew Amanda Sante from other things, but this was Antonio Banderas' first movie in the
American movie, yeah.
American movie.
Right.
And very down to earth, very humble. Kathy Moriarty's from the Bronx. She played the Raging Bull, the blonde girl.
Right.
Yeah. And very down to earth. And we would go to Nikki Blair's, and I'd run into Frankie Valli and Tito. I mean, Hollywood was different in those days. It was a good dancer, Barbara Luna, Connie Francis.
Oh.
You got to understand, these are New Yorkers. I've been transplanted. But it was an honor to, and I've gone on to 4 other movies after that. I've done 2 Carlitos Way and The Bone Collector.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a member of SAG.
Yeah, all righty. Well, when we talked, you said, let's start with Tito and let's end with Tito. So what I chose is one of my favorite clips, and it's at the Montreux Jazz Festival. And so we're going to play this, and then you're going to tell us about this group, this part of his life when he was doing his jazz thing around the world. So let's see if we can pull that up. This is Wow.
That was one of many that he had that started with Martin Cohn, the owner of Latin Percussion. And then you saw potato chips, which is patato. Tito's other favorite piano player who died at a very, very young age. That was Jorge Dato. He had cancer. Mike Vinas on the bass. Alfredo Lafe. That's one of many. Tito, it was easier for Tito. He made good money, and he didn't have that big band to carry. Don't get me wrong, Tito, whoever he was, wherever he was, should I say, he would augment and make a big band because he knew all the musicians all over the world. So it got to a point where he just would take his nucleus, always Patato, and then Sonny Bravo years later, Madera, Dandy, and Andy Gonzalez, different people. But Tito was, he loved his big band because he could stretch, But I have videos where Tito has the little group and there was Shering sits in, George Shering, Ray Barretto. It was easier to take these little groups to these jazz festivals.
But what excitement a quintet can project. My God. I could watch that over and over.
Especially Patato, as short as he was. His hands were smaller than mine, but the sound that would come. We used to tell him, I give him a Heineken. Sing to me because I don't understand you. Don't go fast. No, but he was very, all of them. And Danto was a gentleman from Argentina. Whatever I needed, whoever he needed, I was there for him. Very down to earth. All the guys, Mongo got to sit in with Tito later on, with the little groups. Giovanni Hidalgo. There's one called Calle 54 where Tito has Dave Allen, where he plays the vibes. Hilton Ruiz is on piano. That's another piano player.
Wow.
And he goes to the timbales and Giovanni. So, Tito was Tito went. I miss him every day.
You have lived such an exciting life. You have witnessed so much musical history. You have rubbed elbows, not just rubbed elbows, but just been the confidants of the legends, the pioneers, the music makers, the one who had put our music on the map. And you must be just so thankful and living in appreciation all the time for what you have experienced in your life.
I'm living, I guess, Tito's dream because he believed in it. I believed in it. And I believe, the culture. If we don't teach these children, we're all historians. Earl is a historian, you're a historian. We all have something to say. And if we don't share with this generation, future generations, it's going to be lost.
Well, before we stop, please tell us about your the classes that you give.
I start on August. I start October 16th. I do it on Zoom. I advertise it. As a matter of fact, anybody that goes on my page now, you'll see the schedule. That's my cover page. And I show videos, basically what we do. And I get everybody, and they talk to me, and they ask about this, they ask about that. We just lost Harlow, we just lost Roberto Lorena, Johnny Ventura. It's all part of history. This is what we talk about.
Do you have to register, or do you just tune
in?
You
register.
And there's
a link.
Okay.
The school will be putting it up. October starts, what is it, Friday? Yeah. Excuse me, this week. So in the next week or so, you'll see the link. Okay. And I hope to see all you guys and everybody else that tunes into your show, Earl.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll do it again whenever you run. I'm ready. I particularly want to thank you both. I enjoyed this. And, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, you helped us gain more insight and more knowledge and more appreciation. And I don't know if we could love the music anymore, but the more you hear it, and the different versions and tunes that you never heard, or pieces of history that you never knew about, this is something that
Well, it's a constant, Eileen, remember, you're constantly learning. It doesn't end today.
Right.
It's constantly learn. I didn't know that. Wow, Earl told me this. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm learning something. And you learn every day, especially if it's about this music. Somebody's liable to come up with something. Joe, do you have this? No. I said, where'd you? Well, I have,
Yes.
And Sammy Gil Lopez, may he rest in peace, he told me every time Sammy Davis would come into town, they would try to get Tito to back him up when he did a show in Long Island.
Wow.
I mean, these are little things that
Yeah, we would never know. And so we're so grateful that you took the time to be with us and help educate us and entertain us.
Like I said, I'll be there anytime you want.
Okay,
I'm
Earl?
always available.
Joe, I'm just speechless.
And my bags are packed if you need me to go out there to do it.
Thank you so much, Joe. It was certainly an honor, and I learned a whole lot today. A whole lot.
It was an honor for me to be on your show. To you and Eileen, thank you. And like I said, I'll gladly do it again.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Joe. We'll see everybody next week with Benny Bonilla.
Oh, another story.
Yeah. Okay.
Benny could enlighten you. Great. All right.
All right.
Thank you. And have a good one.
Good night.
Good night now.